Could you imagine your neighbor, someone you've shared meals with, turning on you overnight, becoming your executioner? In the heart of Africa, in Rwanda, this unimaginable horror unfolded in 1994. A chilling tale of humanity's darkest side, the Rwandan Genocide was a cataclysmic event that saw friends turn foes, neighbors become murderers, and a nation torn apart by ethnic hatred. The scale and brutality of this atrocity are beyond comprehension. This was the horrifying reality for countless Rwandans during the 1994 genocide. But to understand this tragedy, we have to rewind to the years leading up to the genocide. The tensions between the Hutu and Tutsi ethnic groups in Rwanda were not a recent development. In fact, they had been simmering for centuries, a toxic brew of rivalry and resentment passed down through generations. Traditionally, the Tutsi, a minority, were the ruling class, while the Hutu majority were typically farmers. This social structure was largely unchanged, until the arrival of a new player on the scene, Belgium. Belgium began its colonial rule over Rwanda in the early 20th century, and with it, brought a new system of racial classification. The Belgians believed the Tutsi to be racially superior, and thus more fit to carry out colonial rule. This bestowed upon the Tutsi an elevated status and further power, deepening the divide between the two ethnic groups. However, in the mid-20th century, the Belgians shifted their support towards the Hutu, who were growing increasingly resentful of their Tutsi rulers. This led to a surge of violence against the Tutsi, culminating in the Rwandan Revolution in 1959, which saw the Hutu seize power. Fast forward to April 6, 1994. The plane carrying Rwanda's Hutu president, Juvenal Habyarimana, was shot down as it approached the capital, Kigali. All on board perished, including the president of Burundi. While it remains unclear who was responsible for the attack, the assassination of Habyarimana was the spark that ignited the powder keg of ethnic tension that had been building up for decades. In the hours following the crash, roadblocks sprung up around Kigali. Lists of government opponents were distributed to militias who began hunting down and killing Tutsi and moderate Hutu leaders. Radio broadcasts incited violence, calling for a final solution to the Tutsi problem. The stage was set for a horrific display of violence and brutality, the likes of which the world had never seen. And so, the fuse for one of the darkest chapters in human history was lit. In just 100 days, about 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus were systematically slaughtered. This statement, as chilling as it is, barely scratches the surface of the horror that unfolded in Rwanda in the spring of 1994. The genocide was not a spontaneous eruption of violence but a meticulously planned and executed operation. At the center of this terror were the Interahamwe, a militia group trained and armed by the government, and their mission was clear: to wipe out the Tutsi population. The Interahamwe were not alone in this. They were backed by the Rwandan government, which not only provided them with weapons, but also gave them a free hand to carry out their deadly mission. The government did more than just turn a blind eye to the atrocities, it played an active role in orchestrating them. One of the most insidious tools used during this time was radio propaganda. Radio stations, most notably Radio Television Libre des Mille Collines, were used to spread hate speech and encourage violence against the Tutsis. They dehumanized the Tutsis, calling them cockroaches and snakes, and urged their listeners to exterminate them. This constant barrage of hate speech fueled the violence and made the genocide seem like a necessary and justified act. As the genocide unfolded, the world watched, but did little to intervene. The United Nations, despite having peacekeepers in the country, failed to act decisively. The international community largely stood by as the slaughter escalated, paralyzed by indecision, bureaucratic hurdles, and a reluctance to intervene in what was seen as an internal conflict. This inaction allowed the genocide to continue unabated, with devastating consequences. The speed and scale of the killings were staggering. On average, 5 Tutsis were murdered every minute of every day for 100 days. Whole families were wiped out and entire communities were decimated. The killers showed no mercy, not even to the young or the old. The brutality was such that it is hard to comprehend. The genocide was not a random act of violence but a systematic campaign of extermination. It was carried out with a chilling efficiency, with lists of Tutsis to be killed and roadblocks set up to catch those trying to flee. The killers were often neighbors, colleagues, and sometimes even friends of those they murdered. This close proximity between the killers and their victims added another layer of horror to the genocide. In a span of just 100 days, Rwanda was transformed from a country known for its breathtaking beauty into a land soaked in blood. A slaughter of unimaginable proportions had been carried out, almost entirely unchecked. The world had failed Rwanda, and the cost of this failure was measured in hundreds of thousands of lives lost. When the dust settled, Rwanda was a country in ruins, its people scarred and its social fabric torn. After the horrific 100 days of slaughter, Rwanda was left desolate, grappling with the magnitude of the atrocities committed. The genocide had extinguished lives, shattered families, and left an indelible mark on the survivors. In the immediate aftermath, a refugee crisis erupted as millions, both perpetrators fleeing justice and victims seeking solace, flooded into neighboring countries. In this chaotic exodus, countless lives were lost to disease and famine. The world watched in horror as the scale of the disaster unfolded, with international aid agencies struggling to cope with the magnitude of the crisis. But the end of the genocide did not mean the end of the nightmare for Rwanda. The country was left to deal with the grim task of seeking justice for the victims. The International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda was established, tasked with bringing those responsible for the genocide to justice. However, the process was slow, and many felt it did not go far enough in delivering justice. Parallel to this, within Rwanda, a traditional form of justice known as Gacaca courts were set up. These community-based courts aim to promote reconciliation by having perpetrators face their victims and ask for forgiveness. Despite criticism, these courts played a crucial role in fostering reconciliation and healing within communities. The genocide left behind a deep psychological scar on the Rwandan populace. Many survivors were left battling trauma, and the social fabric of the country was torn apart. The long-term impacts were immense. A generation grew up bearing the weight of the genocide, their lives defined by the events of those 100 days. Economically, the country had to start from scratch. Infrastructure was destroyed, and the workforce depleted. Yet, despite these overwhelming challenges, Rwanda has made remarkable strides in rebuilding itself. Today, it's considered one of Africa's success stories, a testament to the resilience and determination of its people. The country was left to grapple with the ghosts of its past while trying to forge a future. The aftermath of the Rwandan genocide is a poignant reminder of humanity's capacity for both unspeakable evil and incredible resilience. More than 2 decades later, the Rwandan genocide remains a powerful reminder of the depths to which humanity can sink. It's a grim testament to the destructive potential of division and hate, a stark warning echoing through the halls of history. Its significance in our collective past is more than just a record of 100 days of slaughter. It's an enduring lesson about the dangers of hate speech and ethnic division, the radio broadcasts that stoked the fires of hatred, the dehumanizing rhetoric that pitted neighbor against neighbor, are chilling reminders of how words can be weaponized, how they can lead to unspeakable violence. The genocide was not only a human tragedy, but also a turning point for international law and policy. It exposed the inadequacy of the world's response and the dire consequences of inaction. It sparked a global conversation about our collective responsibility to protect those threatened by mass atrocities. This dialogue led to the birth of the principle of responsibility to protect, an international security and human rights norm to address the international community's failure to prevent and stop genocides, war crimes, ethnic cleansing, and crimes against humanity. The Rwandan genocide also left an indelible mark on the International Criminal Court. The establishment of the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda set a precedent for holding leaders accountable for their actions, for enforcing justice even in the face of unimaginable atrocities. It was a significant step towards acknowledging and addressing the horrific crimes committed during the genocide, and a crucial component in the long and arduous journey towards reconciliation and healing. The legacy of the genocide continues to shape Rwanda today, fostering a national commitment to unity and reconciliation. It has influenced their approach to governance, social cohesion, and justice. It has inspired resilience, a determination to rise from the ashes of their past and build a future defined not by division, but by unity. This tragic chapter in our history underscores the importance of vigilance against hate and the necessity of international intervention when atrocities threaten our shared humanity. Let it serve as a reminder, a call to action, a beacon guiding us towards a world where such atrocities are consigned to the annals of history, never to be repeated. So, we return to our opening question. Now, armed with the knowledge of the terrifying events that unfolded in Rwanda, we are better equipped to understand the gravity of it. The causes and consequences of the Rwandan genocide are a chilling testament to the depths of human cruelty and the heights of human endurance. The Rwandan genocide was a stark reminder of our collective failure as a global community. It is a lesson we must never forget, as we strive to create a world where such atrocities are relegated to the pages of history, never to be repeated.